Hi everyone, this is Stephanie with National Teen Lock-In. We are joining with S.J. Kincaid, and here we go. She is the author of the Insignia trilogy, so without further ado, here she is. Welcome, S.J. Kincaid.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's great to be here today. It's great to be here, and I already have some questions, so I will just answer these questions, and anything else that you have, just feel free to send them in. So I will start with question 1. Did you get the idea for the Insignia series from Ender's Game or from somewhere else? Well, the idea for Insignia, it really came to me when I was writing the book that I wrote. Insignia was my 7th manuscript, and I wrote 6 that did not get published before Insignia. And so when I was writing number 6, unpublished book number 6, I was the setting was in the near future. So I had some bad guys with some military technology. So I was kind of looking up what people who know about military warfare, what they think is going to be the technological, like just what mechanisms are likely to exist in the near future. And one of the articles I read discussed how future warfare would probably not be fought by soldiers, but using fleets of automated drones. And as soon as I saw that, this image came into my head of these 2 people on opposite sides of this great world war, both controlling fleets of automated drones and sort of having some sort of personal connection or rivalry, and just changing the world in a way. And this sort of also ties into question 2, who or what or where inspired Medusa? Because that was a big, that was where Tom and where Medusa came from, ultimately, as well as just my idea for the series. Of course, to add a bit to the Medusa thing, the idea I had with Tom and Medusa's relationship was an exaggeration of sort of online dating situation where 2 people can have a real connection online and just have no idea, like, they don't know anything about each other in real life. So those 2 things kind of form the Tom and Medusa dynamic for me in my mind. Let's see, I'm trying to think. Oh yes, and the other thing, physically, like Medusa, I had in mind, I have a best friend, her middle name's Yalan, and so, you know, she's a really awesome girl. Like, she's done Peace Corps in Sierra Leone and just a really bold person. So, you know, I kind of infused a bit of that personality into the character of Medusa. So, all right, so let's go to the next question. What do you think about the current movies based on YA novels, and which of your books do you think would make a great movie? Well, as a YA writer, I think it's awesome that there are so many current books based on YA novels. I've really enjoyed Hunger Games. I've enjoyed Divergent. I saw The Fault in Our Stars, and let's see. I saw The Maze Runner, and yeah, I think it's awesome just to see how these books translate on screen, especially because so many of these directors and screenwriters seem to stay pretty true to the books, you know, which is always great, because in the past, sometimes when they had book adaptations on screen, they pretty much just kept the character names and changed everything about it. I think with Twilight, what I heard was they originally wanted to make Bella a track star and something like that, which, you know, that when MTV owned the rights, and then when someone actually made the Twilight movie, they luckily, you know, they kept it closer to the book, and I think people appreciate that a lot more. As for which of my books do I think, you know, Insignia, I always have felt like Fox bought the rights, but I always thought Insignia would make a better TV movie or something, because it's kind of episodic. So if I were to come down to it, which of my books, since I only have those 3 in that trilogy, I'd probably say Catalyst, because it has, you know, the biggest battle scenes, the most dramatic moments of the series. I definitely think that would make the best movie. So what is up next for you? Well, currently I have a finished story, which is set in this empire in the distant future. It's sort of a galactic empire. And it's kind of like I don't know, probably none of you have seen I, Claudius, but that's kind of what it's meant to be, kind of like I, Claudius in space, with these sort of conniving aristocrats and kind of dark. But it was a lot of fun to write, and I'm hoping I'll sell that. So if I sell something called Burning Bright, that's what's next for me. And if that doesn't sell, then something else will be next. So we shall see. Okay, hold on, let me scroll down a sec. Did you know Insignia was going to be a trilogy to begin with, or did it evolve into one? I hoped that Insignia would be a series when I wrote it, but you know, I had written 6 books before that, and several of those I hoped would be a series, and they didn't even get picked up for 1 book. So when I wrote Insignia, I wrote something that could stand alone, but something that could lead to a series. And actually, originally I was thinking I want it to be 5 books long, you know, and after writing 3 books in the same series, I'm like, oh, thank God there weren't 5 books to it. I sort of came up with a plan. HarperCollins bought 3 books. And so I sort of thought up this whole elaborate storyline, which would span 4 books. But since, you know, it was just 3, I sort of put what would have been in book 4 and what would have been in book 3 into Catalyst, into book 3. So it ended up being actually a really action-packed story because of that. So I'm actually kind of glad the way it worked out. But so yeah, I guess you could say it evolved into a trilogy, but I always had a trilogy in mind. So question number 6, do you like Doctor Who? I've seen the first season of Doctor Who and I enjoyed that, but I haven't really watched beyond that. I know they changed the Doctor to the one that's a lot of people like a lot more, but I kind of got used to that guy from season 1. So I guess you could say yes and no. Question 7, do you like Star Trek? Yes, I do. I mean, I grew up on Star Trek. You know, I grew up with Star Trek: The Next Generation, and you know, it's kind of probably where my love of sci-fi came from. Of course, there were a lot of other shows that were pretty, like Babylon 5 when I was younger was a show that I really liked, and Farscape, that was also a great show. But I would definitely say, yes, I'm a Trekkie. And I would say Star Trek is kind of the future I wish we would have. You know, something where, you know, instead of just being stuck on Earth and fighting each other all the time, humanity sort of expanded out into space and, you know, did all sorts of interesting things out there. I mean, that's kind of what I'd love to see. So Star Trek to me is kind of the ideal future. Number 8, can you tell us about your writing process? Do you outline or do you start with characters? Sorry. It's hard to say. I do a bit of both. I always like to know what ending I'm writing towards, and I usually think up some very key scenes. Like, you know, there's a scene with Blackburn and Tom, sort of at the climax to Catalyst, where I had that thought up when I was writing Insignia for sure. I just didn't know how I was going to get to that scene with those 2 characters. But with Insignia, when I wrote the first segment of Insignia, I already had this sort of space war idea, but I didn't really realize that Tom Raines was going to be in there. I actually wrote a story, I wrote 7,000 words of a story about this kid, Tom Raines, who was in a casino with his father, traveling from place to place, and Tom was a gamer. And at some point in my mind, I just connected the idea of this character being part of this other story that I sort of had in mind. And yes, from there, I sort of planned ahead for big scenes, but luckily when I plan ahead, I always sort of leave some room so I can, a lot of the time I have to figure out how I'm going to get to those big scenes. And that's a lot of fun to do, actually, instead of just sort of going strictly by an outline, like beat by beat by beat, you know. So let's see what is next. What do you think is up next in the YA world? As far as big trends and stuff, well, right now we're kind of in the middle of a really big fantasy boom, and I think stuff like Throne of Glass, and Girl of Fire and Thorns are kind of you know, big stories like that. The Red Queen are really what's propelling that along, and I think it's probably going to keep going for a little while. So I definitely think high fantasy is, and also Game of Thrones, of course, you know, is helping to feed into that. trends. So I would say it's going to stay fantasy for a while, because it took dystopian like 4 years or so to actually burn out. So that's my personal theory. Just a sec. Do you like Star Wars? Are you looking forward to the new movie and books this fall? I do like Star Wars. I like Star Trek more, but I love the original Star Wars when they have those characters, Princess Leia, Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, just because they're such interesting characters and they're funny, and they're just a lot of fun to watch. I did not like the new movies. I am hoping that I'm definitely going to see the Disney movie, because Disney tends to do things pretty well, and I'm hoping that the new movie is closer to the original movies quality-wise than it was to you know, George Lucas's newest ventures with him. So yeah, I do like Star Wars. Who is your favorite Star Trek character? Wow. I'm probably gonna say Captain Kirk. I really like Captain Kirk. I mean, I don't know. He's just, you know, he's just a fun character to watch. And you know what? But it's just that trio of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. I mean, they had so much personality, and you know, they're kind of combative with each other. You know, and I like that. I find those three characters kind of interesting together. Hi. All right, next question. I'm currently writing a series, and I wanted to know how to avoid cliches in characters, settings, or anything in general with writing. Can you give me some advice or tips? Well, let's see. You know, the generic writing advice I always give is read a lot and write a lot. However, let's see. I think with avoiding cliches in characters, the best way to do that, because you know, there are certain stock characters that people like to read, and sometimes familiarity is kind of comforting for someone who's reading a book. So what I would just keep in mind is when you think about these characters yourself, develop them in your mind, think about them a lot, really make them three-dimensional in your own mind, and I think that's going to come out on paper. If this is just a stock character to you, then they're going to come across as a stock character to a reader. So I would just say, yeah, make sure your characters are fully real in your own mind, and then they will be fully real on paper. That's just what I can think of as the best possible advice for that. Let's see. Are you a Game of Thrones fan? Yes, I love Game of Thrones. I read the books back in college, and there were only 3 books out at the time. So it's like, yay, this is so good. And so it took forever for book 4 to come out. And when it did, I'd forgotten all the characters. And, you know, and also book 4 didn't feature a lot of the characters that I really remembered vividly. So I was like, I'm going to wait until this series is done to reread it all. And in the meantime, it then became a TV show and a board game and all sorts of other things. So yes, I'm a Game of Thrones fan. And yes, I'm going to wait to reread all the books until they're all completed, whenever that happens. All right. 14. Do you think you will always stay in the more fantasy worlds of writing, or do you think you will try other genres? I don't know. Right now, I kind of like what I'm doing, which is kind of like sci-fi for young adult readers. I really have a lot of ideas, and you know, at the moment, it's just such an interesting time period in life to write about. I think the thing that intrigues me about writing for teenagers is oftentimes, you know, as a teenager, you're kind of at the point where you think in a lot of ways like, you know, an adult, but you don't have the ability to choose a lot of things about your life. You don't get to choose where you go to school. You don't have the mobility an adult has. And I find that sort of contrast very interesting, because you can put these characters in these roles that are, you know, that are much more involved, or something that an adult usually does. You can put a character in that role, but you have to remember that this is also still a teenager. This is still someone who probably has parents they have to tell them where they are, and you know, other constraints. So I really am interested in YA, and for now I think I'm just going to stay writing what I'm writing. I won't rule anything out. I've always thought about writing historical fiction, but there's a lot of research involved in historical fiction, so I don't know if I'm going to do that anytime soon. Okay, when did you start writing? I started writing when I was really, really young, actually. My sister was the one who always wanted to be a writer. She just knew from the time she was in basically 4th grade. And I was 4 years younger than her, and I did everything my sister did. I mean, I was that really annoying younger sibling who just like followed her around and wanted to be just like her. So when she started writing, I started writing. And I kept writing, luckily. And it's basically been my primary hobby since I was very young. When I was younger, though, it was something I was really secretive about. I didn't want anyone to read my writing because I was so sure that it was really bad. And actually, it wasn't until I got my book contract that I told my parents and my family that I'd been writing all these years. Because, you know, they knew I probably did a bit here and there, but they had no idea how serious I was about it. So, yes, I just say that I started writing at a very young age. Do you like crunchy peanut butter or smooth? I prefer crunchy. Crunchy peanut butter just has a lot more texture, and smooth peanut butter has its applications in certain situations, but you know, if you're talking about peanut butter and jelly sandwich, you want crunchy. You know, simple as that. What is a normal day like for you? Well, I would say a normal day, let's see, if I'm not traveling anywhere and I'm just sort of around, I would say, let's see, I probably go to Starbucks or something, and I spend about 2 to 3 hours there, and I write. And also, you know, probably about half an hour of that is trying to work up to writing. I always try to know in advance what I'm going to write that day, like, because that's just how I work. I need to know beforehand. And then let's see, come back and I study a bit because I'm studying healthcare stuff, so I do that. And at the moment, that's my typical day. It's a little uneventful at the moment. Do you keep notebooks of ideas? I don't keep notebooks, but I do have documents, notepad documents on my computer where I just write down maybe a sentence or two as I get ideas. And sometimes when I'm sort of in a writing dry spell, or if I'm between manuscripts, I will open all those notepad documents and sort of look at them and see if I can make anything of them. But, you know, a lot of them just end up sitting there for several years. And sometimes if I come up with a really clever idea and I just can't act on it, I mean, actually, no, pretty inevitably, if I come up with a clever idea and I can't act on it, I end up seeing someone else sell something just like that. So, you know, then I delete that idea because it's been used. It's been done. Who is your favorite author? I would say my favorite author is a woman named Susan Kay, and she wrote this amazing book called Legacy that I read when I was in 7th grade for the first time. And it was a novel, but it was about Queen Elizabeth I, and it was her life, birth to death, and it was so good. It is such an amazing book. If any of you guys like, and you know, you don't even have to like history to love this book. I knew nothing about Tudor England or anything like that, and I could not put the book down. And I probably have reread it about 40 times since then. I majored in history, and I wasn't even interested in history until I'd read this book. And I'd say it was a really influential book on my life. So, Legacy by Susan Kay. All right. What is your favorite food? You know, I usually go with chocolate for this. I'd say chocolate peanut butter cups like Reese's, but you know, lately I've been like kind of going with the jelly beans a lot, which you know, I really wish my favorite food was like broccoli or something, but unfortunately, no, it tends to be the decadent and, you know, not great for you stuff. 21. Do you spend most of your time writing? I wouldn't say I spend most of my time writing. I'd say I spend most of my time thinking about writing. A lot of writing is just stuff that I dream up in my head way beforehand, and then I actually put it on paper. But you know, writing is, when I actually sit down and do it, it's actually fairly quick. It's kind of like the end of the writing process for me. And then there comes the revisions and rereading and stuff like that, and that also takes up a lot of time. So, what was your most recent book? The most recent one I've read? That would be, well, there are 2 books. This one is awesome. I was rereading it, actually. I was given this book to blurb. It's called, this is not what the cover actually looks like, Randoms by David Liss, and it comes out in August. And I really like this book. And, you know, if you like Star Trek or something, you will love this book too. It's just a really funny, interesting book about this kid who sort of has this galactic adventure. It's really interesting. So I'd say that was my most recent book. I mean, like, you know, usually with blurbs, you just read the book once, but I've actually been rereading it because, you know, it's just fun to read. Can you tell us about your work in progress? Well, my work in progress, I probably can't say that much about it because also if it doesn't sell, I'll feel very silly talking about it too much. But it is about the far distant future, and a girl named Nemesis is kind of the bodyguard for this girl from a very powerful family. And Nemesis is kind of this genetically engineered, lethal superhuman person, and basically there's this turmoil in the empire when Nemesis has to pose as this other girl and carry off this huge deception. So that's about all I can say about it, but it's a lot more interesting than it sounds, I hope. So, favorite jelly bean flavors? Oh my God, caramel corn. I love that. Let's see, I think it's popcorn flavored one, whatever. I love that one too, yeah. I don't know. Sometimes it changes day to day. It used to be cinnamon, and I got sick of it. So, yes. No. Anything else? Last thoughts I want to give you. Well, basically, for any of you guys who are aspiring writers, I just want to tell you that keep reading, keep writing, as I mentioned earlier. I never believed when I was younger that I would, you know, whenever I was thinking about my potential careers, I never considered the idea of being a professional author just because I had in my mind the idea that it was too hard to get published. I would never be able to sell a book. And, you know, when I wrote 6 books and didn't sell any of them, that kind of got reaffirmed in my mind. So it just seemed like this distant dream. And then one day I had a 3-book deal. So I would just say, keep reading, keep writing, and then once you actually go for it, once you actually go for selling a book, don't give up easily. Just try hard and fight for it. I mean, nothing really worth having, you know, every single thing, like being an actor, being a journalist, being a writer, anything that is a career a lot of people want, there are going to be a lot of very talented, hardworking people vying for it. So you just have to be the one who doesn't give up. Okay. Those are my last thoughts. So, yeah. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us for National Teen Lock-In, S.J. Kincaid. We really appreciate it. I didn't see any other questions pop in. So thank you so much for spending the last half an hour with us. We really appreciate you giving your time to us tonight. All right, everyone. National Teen Lock-In World, we will be back at 9 o'clock with Jennifer Neven. And if you have any questions for S.J. Kincaid, feel free to keep following up with us on her Google Plus event page, and I will give them to her, and hopefully she'll be able to respond to us. Thank you so much, and we'll see you again at 9 o'clock. Have a good rest of your night. Bye.